Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with a video that is all about my favorite female writers. It was hard to narrow this list down because I did want to give myself some parameters. I really did not want to just list people who wrote one series or wrote in one world, maybe had multiple series set in the same world. I really wanted to pick authors that I had read very different things from. And so I think I have a good list here of some of my favorite female authors that are currently working. But today's video is in collaboration with Ana Luisa. Ana Luisa is a fabulous jewelry company that I have worked with many times before, and all of their jewelry is carbon neutral. They are trying to reduce their carbon footprint, and that's really why I love them. That's why I've always been interested in them as a brand and why I've supported them, as I really love their commitment to being carbon neutral. All of their packaging for their jewelry is also carbon neutral, which I just think is fabulous. And you probably think something that is really supporting the environment in this way would mean that this is very expensive jewelry, but it is so affordable. It's at prices that you will love. And these pieces are very dainty, but they're also pieces that you can wear every day. And so it feels like a really great investment to me because they are pieces that also don't tarnish. That's one of the most amazing things about Ana Luisa to me. I have pieces from them that I've now had for over a year. They still shine like they just came out of the package, which is incredible to me. But they did send me 3 pieces today. And so one of these is a bracelet, and I don't think I have ever gotten a bracelet from Ana Luisa before, but this is just beautiful. It's very dainty. There you can see it on my arm, and I'll show you a close-up. But there's just a small green stone in the center. I really like this. And one thing that's hard for me with bracelets, and is why I kind of have steered clear of them in the past, is my wrist is actually really rather small. And so it's nice to find a bracelet that really fit my wrist and didn't feel like it was going to fall over my hand. It just kind of rests really nicely. And this stone has not turned over to the bottom of my wrist yet, which I just think is so funny. But this is really, really pretty, and it matches another piece of theirs that I have. I have a necklace with a similar colored stone, and so I think it's really nice to have kind of that matching set. I also got this fabulous chain necklace. I'm obsessed with these. These are really in right now. I think I've seen like basically everyone wear a chain necklace. But I really like this because it's not in your face a chain necklace, if that makes sense. It's very dainty links. It's not very heavy chain links in my opinion, which is what I really, really like about it. And I also love the length. This has been a great layering piece for me. Last but not least, we have these fabulous earrings. I think these are some of the only earrings, other than maybe hoops, that I have gotten from Ana Luisa before that I would say are truly a statement piece. And I just absolutely adore these. I think this is perfect for going into the summer. And you might think too, just looking at that medallion, that they would be rather heavy, but they are not. They are so light on the ear. I'm obsessed with them, and I just love the way that they catch the light. I will leave a link to Ana Luisa down below. They have a great sale going on right now, and I also have a code for y'all, so please do check them out. It's a great way to treat yourself, but it's also a great way to treat others. Mother's Day is coming up, but I will definitely link to them down below. Please go check them out. Please forgive my hair as well, because it has been pouring down rain here, and I got caught in it, and it's like my hair has not yet recovered from that. And so it's just like frizzing and puffing out as the day goes on. But to get into my list of favorite female authors, I think we need to start with the giant to me. And I think I would actually just in general call this author my favorite author of all time. Not even just a favorite female author. I just truly adore her work. And that's Anne Rice, who I just absolutely adore. I think it's been few and far between books of Anne Rice's that I have found truly disappointing. And I would say Anne, along with everyone else on this list, is someone who writes women very well. And I think the number one thing about Anne Rice is her grasp of character. I think I have often recommended her in the past because I think her descriptive writing is just absolutely gorgeous. I think the way that she describes setting, place, and character is just so dynamic and so visual that I can easily see exactly what she is telling me. And that's a gift. And for me, as I get older, it seems like that's a rarer thing that occurs for me. I feel like I need a lot of help from authors nowadays to actually visualize what's going on. I don't really need that with Anne Rice. There's something about her writing that makes you really envision the aesthetic that she is going for. My favorite book of all time is Interview with the Vampire. I think it's just fabulous. And it's one of those things where you sit there and you read this book and you think, there is absolutely nothing that could have been done to improve it, if that makes sense. When I look back on my journey as a reader, I really think Anne Rice is one of the most instrumental authors in making me the reader that I am today. I won't say that she's the person who kind of introduced me to reading or made me obsessed with reading, because I was already a reader when I picked her up, but she definitely gave me a better relationship with reading, and she made me really interrogate books that I picked up. I think I used to be someone who just read to pass the time, and that was just my hobby. That's just how I came down from the day. That's how I processed schoolwork and everything like that. When I was done with homework, I just would read, and if the book wasn't great, who cares? I was reading. But when I read Anne Rice for the first time, I was like, wow, this is what literature can be, truly. And so she is kind of, I think, the author that made me interrogate what I actually like in books. And I still judge almost everything I read by her measure. She's easily my favorite writer, and I would love to reread more from her. I feel like it definitely will hold up. I also was thinking about, when I was crafting this list, authors I would say have influenced my writing. And so authors whose process, whose style of writing I feel like in some way has influenced me. And the person who immediately came to mind for that was Roshani Chokshi. I have read, I think, everything that Roshani Chokshi has written in the young adult and adult sphere. I've never read her middle grade. And there is something genuinely spellbinding to the way that she writes. And I often am encouraged when I read a book of hers and I automatically want to write. I want to get back into the headspace and start writing something. But sometimes I finish a book of hers and I think, what's the point? Because I'll never be able to do it the way that she does. And so she is a really incredibly talented fantasy author. And I think, if you want to know the truth, basically everyone I'm going to talk about today is a fantasy author. And I don't really know why that is. That's so interesting that that's what kind of pulls me in. I think it takes a specific type of talent to envision an entirely different world to our own. And I think also in fantasy, what makes me engaged in it is character. And so I feel like all of these authors write really incredibly dynamic characters. Roshani Chokshi is maybe the one of this list that doesn't write the strongest characters, in my opinion. But what she does is she crafts a world in such an interesting way, and she also creates a character that you automatically figure out. You don't often spend her novels thinking any of the characters are bland, but you kind of automatically know what they are going to be. They often fit into a certain type of archetype, which I kind of enjoy and I think is comforting in fantasy especially, but I can see that she is probably an author that will not work for everyone. And especially if you just don't get on with her writing style, you're really going to struggle with her. This is her most recent release, The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, which is an adult fantasy, and I think it has been marketed the wrong way. I think a lot of people are picking this up thinking it's going to be something specific, and that is not what this book is at all. That's just not what this book is. And so I think if you go into this expecting the right thing, you'll probably really love it. But this was kind of her love letter to fairy tales. And I was obsessed with it, just truly spellbound when I was reading this. Did not want to put it down just because of her language. It was just so wonderful to read. I follow Roshani Chokshi on basically all of her social media, and I think her writing process is incredibly fascinating as well. And I feel like maybe not just is she an influence on my writing, but I feel like her process feels very similar to mine when I've written. And so to me, she's really interesting for a wide variety of reasons. I feel like we have a lot in common in terms of process and like brainstorming. And I think we're attracted to the same things in fiction, which is really interesting and is definitely why she's one of my favorites. We also have Juliette Marillier, who is a perennial favorite of mine, one of my favorite authors of all time. And I want to say, people like Anne Rice and even Roshani Chokshi, they are people who have generally always gotten a 4 or a 5-star from me. And there have been some misses in Anne Rice's canon, that's for sure. There's no argument there from me. Juliette Marillier is one that I have not a love-hate relationship with, but a lot of her books are incredible to me, and a lot of her books are just mid-tier. And I never have a clue when I am going into a new series from her. I never have a clue how it's going to end up. And so I have either 5 stars from her or 2.5 or 3 stars. There's just no in between. And I have learned that what I really like from Juliette Marillier is her earlier written works. But this series, the Dark Mirror series, is absolutely incredible, and I am due for a reread of these. She is another author who just understands character. My favorite book of hers is another of my favorite books of all time, Daughter of the Forest. And I think Daughter of the Forest is a book that people are maybe not disappointed by, but I think it's another one that you go into with a certain set of expectations, and then you find that's not what the book is at all. Daughter of the Forest feels like 2 very separate stories included in one. The first half feels totally disconnected from the second sometimes, but it works. It's one of the most perfect novels that I have ever read, and it's because of the character work that is done in it. You may say that Daughter of the Forest is very slow. You may also say that most everything else she writes is very slow. She has a very particular style that, again, I just don't think will work for everyone. But to me, the books actually do need to be slow because you get so invested in the characters. And what's so great about it is that by the end, the characters just feel real to you. I mean, it was years on after reading Daughter of the Forest for the first time, I would still be thinking about the main characters in that. I also think Juliette Marillier is a very skilled romance writer. I think a lot of what I take away from her books and a lot of what I really enjoy about them is the romance. And really, years ago when I first started reading her, I would not have said that I am a romance reader. That's not often what I am reading a book for. If romance is there, that's fine, but I don't often find myself thinking about the romance or really rooting for the main characters to get together. I do in her books. That's what I'm thinking about. And I think it's because the characters are so well crafted, their interactions with each other are so well crafted that it feels very organic and natural to me, and it feels like just a natural progression of the plot. It doesn't feel forced in any way. And I sometimes do feel like romance and fantasy books can feel kind of forced, but it never does here. So Juliette Marillier is often writing fae stories, and they are often set in kind of ancient Ireland or ancient Britain, and all of her series are set there, I think, except for one, which is truly set in a fantasy world. I love a dark age fantasy. I just eat that up, and I don't know if it's actually due to reading Juliette Marillier that I'm so obsessed with that. Probably so. But I think she is an interesting fantasy author, and she's one that you can try if you feel like you don't actually like fantasy, because though there are fantasy elements present, they never seem to take over the plot of the story either. The fae are often not really that present on the page. And so if you're someone who enjoys historical fiction, but you might want to try some fantasy, I think she's a pretty decent author to try with. She's one of my favorites. Let's talk about Mary Shelley. Could I make this video without her? No, I know you know that. I love her. I love her. It's almost at this point not even about her writing, it's just about her. I just love her. If you could sit with any historical figure and just talk for a day, I would choose Mary. I really would. I would just love to sit with her. I feel like we would be best friends. Maybe we wouldn't, but I feel like we would be best friends. And her writing is so emotional and raw. I think a lot of times when you go into a classic, you feel at length from a lot of stuff. That's the way I feel anyway. Sometimes writing in classics is truly about just turning a beautiful phrase, which I really enjoy. But there's something about Mary's writing that is so raw. It's telling a story, it's telling you a plot, but it's also telling you something about her. Of all the classic female authors that I've read, she really has the most interesting style in my opinion, because I often feel like On one level, yes, I'm reading the plot, I'm reading the story. On another level, I'm talking to her because there's something very personal in her writing. It's like she's revealing part of herself to you by you reading her work. And it makes it feel kind of invasive, but it's also like you really got to know her throughout this. In so many ways, Mary Shelley does not feel like a historical figure to me. She does not feel like someone who is dead. She truly feels alive. That particularly comes through in her writing. I love most of her novels. My favorite novel of hers is Valperga, which is a historical fiction set in Italy. This is my next read from her. I've started reading this. This is The Fortunes of Perkin Warbeck, which is also historical fiction, this time set in the Wars of the Roses. But she is, of course, most known for Frankenstein, which is one of the most electrifying novels that you can read. I say this all the time. If you have never read it, and you have only seen Hollywood's interpretation of what Frankenstein is, you are in for such a treat. It is not intimidating at all. It's very short. It's beautifully written. If you are new to classics, I think you could easily pick up Frankenstein because it is something that actually helped me get back into reading classics when I was coming back to them after graduating from university. I love her. She is another of my favorite authors of all time. She is right up there with Anne Rice for me. And something that's really interesting about her is that she never tried the same thing twice. She does have a couple of historical fictions, and she does have a couple of sci-fis, but they are so vastly different from each other. She was always trying something new. We then have Laura Sebastian, who started her journey in the realm of YA, and she has since moved into adult fiction. But I think she has a YA series ongoing right now that I really want to try. I'm really excited about. But I think there is something very cozy about Laura Sebastian. And so that is why she's one of my favorites. I think the reason that I enjoy reading actually is tropes. I think on booktube, certain tropes are like bad words. It's like, oh, I don't want to read anything with a love triangle. I don't want to read a fantasy where a farmer boy, becomes special, finds out he's the king of the land. I do. It never gets old to me. The reason that these are tropes are that they're things that work. And Laura Sebastian's first series is very tropey. I mean, very, very tropey. But there's something so cozy and comforting about that. It's kind of like reading a story that you've read before, but it's still brand new because you don't know these characters. She's another whose characters I think are really interesting. And she's also very interested in kind of the Dark Age Britain, Dark Age Ireland. And our first series, it seems, is kind of Dark Age German inspired. We need more of that. We need more of that. This book that I'm holding is an Arthurian retelling. It's my favorite of hers and is one of my favorite books of all time, and it is certainly my favorite Arthurian legend retelling. I think a lot of people call Laura Sebastian predictable, but there's something that feels just very cozy about that to me. And I personally really like the predictability. I think these are great books that kind of get you out of a reading slump. So she is an author that I really love currently, but I am just so excited to see what comes next from her. We have Shannon Chakraborty. I am cheating here because I know I said that I wasn't going to list anyone who just wrote series or just wrote series in the same world. And so I have read one trilogy from Shannon Chakraborty, the Daevabad trilogy, but she has started a new series. And so I feel like I can talk about her because I also gave this book 5 stars, which is The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. What made me feel like I could put her on this list is that the Daevabad trilogy is so incredibly different to this book and to what I think this series is going to be. It's really fresh and exciting to me to see an author truly experiment with their style and to also experiment with the characters that they're interested in, because what I really enjoyed about this is that the majority of the characters are older. And when I say older, they're like 40. They're not that old, but it's still interesting to read a book that's adult, that's not about somebody who's 28 or 29 at the oldest. And so I personally just really enjoyed this. I found it refreshing, but I also thought it really showed her skill and her craft as a writer because it is so incredibly different from the Daevabad trilogy. The Daevabad trilogy has really high stakes. It's very dark. It's very character driven, and it's having some really important conversations on the page. And so that's why it's one of my favorite fantasy trilogies of all time. This felt so fun, lighthearted. It felt like going from Game of Thrones to Dungeons and Dragons. And both of those are great. So she has cemented herself as a favorite author for me. I am so excited about the rest of this trilogy, and I am so excited to see what else comes from her. I applaud her for wanting to do something totally different, and I think it really, really worked for her. And so she is tentatively on my list of favorite female authors. I'm really excited to see what else comes from her. Last but not least, we have Rebecca Ross, who is an author that I feel like I don't talk about often enough on my channel, but I have really enjoyed what I've seen from her. Rebecca Ross is another one who started in the YA realm and who has since moved into adult. This is a YA release. It's her newest release. I'm really excited about starting this. What I really want to say about her, and the reason that I would consider her a favorite, is that I think she is constantly taking risks and she is constantly doing something new. Every series she does feels very distinct, feels very separate, and just is very interesting and dynamic. Her first duology is one that truly swept me off my feet, and I can't believe more people don't talk about her because of that duology alone. I think you went into that thinking it was going to be something very specific, and that's not what it was. And it was just a great ride. She has since had an adult duology that I also thought was really interesting because it was still fantasy, but it had a mystery element present that I thought she did very, very well. This is kind of a World War I inspired fantasy with an enemies to lovers romance at the heart. She's just constantly trying something new, and I feel like depending on what you like, depending on the tropes that you're into, she probably has a book that will agree with you. And I really enjoy the way that she writes her prose. I won't say that she's the most flowery author out there, but I think she really does manage to make her writing really beautiful. But I really just want to applaud her creativity. I think she is constantly doing something new and innovative. And so she is an author that I really like watching. I'm really interested to know what is next from her because it's never what I think it's going to be. So that is my current list of favorite female authors. I know this list will grow, I know it will change, and I would love to know down below who your favorite female authors are, if we have any overlap. But please remember to check out Ana Luisa. I'll have them linked down below along with my code. But that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.